Well, as you may know, Greg Musselman is a regular guest with us in his role as Vice President of Media and Domestic Ministry for the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. He works with us to raise awareness of what persecuted Christians are suffering around the world. Joining him today is what I'm sure he would call his better half, his wife Arlene, who's a talented artist, a co-advocate for persecuted Christians, and a young adults leader. Welcome, guys.
Good to be with you.
So nice I always see you, Greg, but look, you brought your beautiful wife today. Thank you for that.
Well, it's a great privilege to have her here and a great privilege to be with you, a good friend.
And you're unpacking some of your personal journey, and thank you for that. I know it takes courage and bravery, and you want to talk about some of the things that happened in your marriage. So let's dive in. 32 years, you've been married, 4 children between 21 and 31.
Yes.
Arlene, you were very young when you got married, of course, obviously, like 10 or something.
Thanks.
And
Yes,
you said, like, right from the beginning, you knew that there was something just not quite right.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. I think that when we came together, I think I just realized that very quickly that Greg was very driven and hadn't dealt with some of his past issues. And that was very early on in our marriage. And of course that affects your daily life so much.
And like every optimistic young wife, you tried to address it and said, let's go to counseling, let's try to deal with some of these things. You went to counseling,
right.
And then, Greg, you stopped. What happened?
Well, I probably didn't think I needed counseling. I was a follower of Jesus, and in Christ I can do all things. And I think, I just didn't feel that I needed counseling. A wrong conception of understanding is that, that's just for people that are, maybe a little weak or something, and I'm a strong man of God, I can do all these things. And maybe it was ego, pride, those kinds of things. When I look back on it, it was an absolutely insane thing to do because I didn't get the help that I needed to become more emotionally strong, where Arlene did, and emotionally and, I think spiritually too, she became a lot stronger than I did.
And Arlene, what did counseling show you? Because it was really helping you.
I think it just unpackaged a lot of things from my past. It did, and it helped me to put things back together for our family and how to raise our children. It also showed me, wow, we were putting ministry, or we were doing ministry probably without it being an outflow of who Jesus was, like getting to know Jesus first and then having ministry as an outflow of that, rather than doing a lot in our own strength, in our own power, and very little by the Spirit.
And you realized at that time you were kind of enabling his drivenness in a sense. And
so much so. It was very, very hard to address because it would cause problems. And I was probably a little more passive in those years. I'm no longer that way. That is something that's really changed in me as well.
I didn't like that, by the way.
No, he didn't. That was not a good thing for him. It wasn't, but it was for me. And so that passive behavior started to stop, and I started to address things a little more. And of course, that isn't helpful in a marriage, or it doesn't seem to be helpful in a marriage, So Greg, starting with the persecuted church, we talked about this as well, that, he started to get a world view. I still had a North American view. All of that wasn't real helpful either. It just brought this whole cauldron of difficulty.
Yeah, so you're seeing problems, you're not. So you're arguing more, and of course you're seeing things now. You're traveling the world, you're seeing people being killed for their faith and tortured, and you're hearing these incredible stories. Plus, you're in danger yourself many times in these countries. So you're carrying all that. How's that impacting you now?
Well, I think, as you know, Cheryl, I came from a broadcasting background. I was a sportscaster. And as Arlene said, I married a sportscaster, not a preacher, and, financially and all the things that does in a relationship. And that also puts pressure on. But in broadcasting, I was very driven. I was going to get to the top of the heap and whatever that looked like in, sportscasting or news, whatever. And so I took that same mentality, into my work with the Voice of the Martyrs and covering the persecuted church. And I was coming across these horrendous stories, and I know you've also met many of these people, and it was affecting me emotionally. So you come back and your patience level is not for your family. Well, these people are dying for your faith, and all you care about is going to the mall or your hair or something, and you become very judgmental. And that started to put pressure, and then there were some internal challenges with some leaders that I was working with, and that all culminated in some very difficult times in our marriage.
And Arlene, you had kind of resigned yourself to, well, I can't change Greg. This is kind of going to be what it's going to be, until your kids started saying, there's a consequence to this.
That's where it is. You could mess with me, don't mess with my kids, right? So my daughter had come to me and said, Mom, there's something not right in our family. Something is not right. and my relationship with my dad, she said, I want that to be fixed. And so I had gone that, you know, we had talked for a few days about this, and then I had gone to Greg's office, and I said, you know, Greg, I think your ministry has become your mistress. And it was so all-encompassing. You know, the persecuted church can be that way, that you forget about the everyday things. Mm-hmm. And that was happening in our family. So my daughter was able to, I spoke to Greg about this, and he had gone to counseling, but my daughter was able to go to him and tell her how she felt for the first time. And it was so healing, so very, very healing for her and for Greg.
I know that can't have been easy, Greg. I mean, I've known you for a long time, and you adore your kids, you love your wife.
Yeah.
You know, and so for her to come, and she kind of gave you an ultimatum, like, this has got, like, if this doesn't change, you may not have a family and a wife.
Yeah, and I can feel the emotion welling up in me, because I'd overheard one of, you know, my oldest daughter, Sarah, just talking about with one of her friends that I don't know if my mom and dad are going to make it. Yeah. And at that point, I'm going, whatever ego or pride, who cares? I have no ministry without my family. And so I talked to Sarah, and we cried, and I apologized to all four of my kids. The younger two said, no, Dad, I think things have been pretty good, but especially the older two. And, you know, so I did seek out counseling, and I got a lot of healing, and the Lord has done amazing things. In fact, one of the things we talk about is, you know, something C.S. Lewis talked about, is actually becoming the person that you're actually meant to be. And I feel like I'm finally coming. Yeah, I'm still a driven person. I'm passionate, all those kinds of things. But without a family, you know, I don't have a ministry. And so being the macho guy, I said to Arlene one day, said, you know, I will die for my family, because I've heard those stories. And then she looked at me and said, but will you live for our family? And I just like, wow, because I knew what the consequence was. I'd die for my family. I'd take a bullet. I'd do whatever I could. But was I willing to live in the moments, the day-to-day moments? And as I've got that healing, it's healing in our family. I feel more free. I'm still tired, and I will be taking a sabbatical. You know, I think it's more, the reason is that is I haven't lived the Christian life the way that I should have, you know, empowered by the Spirit and all that kind of thing, and a lot of my own flesh and my own strength, and I've kind of tired out. But I feel this inner peace, and, you know, thank God that she's hung in there with me, and we're enjoying a wonderful adventure now together, traveling more together, and you know, so and I often say, you know, as I've done weddings, you know, husbands love your wives as Christ loves the church. And I really started to try to do that with Arlene, and I think that has made a huge difference. And so of course I know many people in ministry, and that's my heart and my passion, is that we get healthy for the Lord so we can actually do the work of the kingdom. And as you know, a ministry like Voice of the Martyrs is very intense, and so it takes a lot of energy to do that.
It does, and I know that very well. You know, we have a picture of your beautiful family, your restored family. Gorgeous, gorgeous family. And, you know, I want to say too, like, this isn't unique to you. I don't think that this is something that is like, oh, what was wrong with you, Greg Musselman? Like, you know, so many of us in ministry, so many pastors' wives, I'm sure, are watching this right now saying, like, yes, you know, I wish my spouse could hear this, or I need to change that. How hard was it to change that, and what are the priorities now?
Well, the priorities is to, you know, to love my wife first, you know, Jesus first, then my wife and my children. And then the ministry will flow out of that. And I have many pastor friends across Canada, probably hundreds, that I've been in churches, and I've talked to a lot of pastors and families, and they're going through the same kind of struggles. You're trying to balance, you know, living a sacrificial life, serving Jesus, but not losing your family in the middle of it all. And Arlene often says, and because we have many friends in ministry, if we're talking too much ministry, and it's important, but let's talk about Jesus. What's Jesus up to? What's he doing in your life? And we happen to be a part of a church back in St. Albert where we live, that is the focus. And we're seeing, you know, growth, and we're seeing maturity, and we're glad to be a part of a church community as well that cares about us and supports us. And that's what we need in our churches across Canada if we are going to be the body of Christ that we're meant to be in this great country of Canada.
And so you're having the balance. Arlene, you're seeing the difference.
Yes.
And, you know, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Greg, for doing the hard work. You know, so many of us have different seasons in our lives where we have to go to counseling, and it's for the sake of those around us. And so thank you for that, because it's so good to see you guys in such a better place. And I know that the ministry is going to benefit as well.
It's good to be in this place.
It is,
Very
isn't
good,
it?
yes.
Well, I know as we traveled, you thought I needed counseling anyway. We have a lot of,
don't know
have
what
to
you're
keep it
talking
fun,
about.
you know.
There you
Never.
But no, I appreciate the opportunity, and here at Crossroads as well. And we love our, the relationship we have with you guys, and the support. And I do hope, and I know Arlene feels the same, that this time together will help other
I hope so.
wonderful families that love Jesus as well.
Well, thank you for that. And if you've been watching this and maybe this is ringing home to you, you know, that sometimes it can be our job or it can be our ministry, or in Greg's case, it's people on the verge of life and death. And those issues seem so huge sometimes that we can put everything to the side, and it seems like a noble thing. But are the people in your life suffering for that? And is that really what Jesus wants? Those are tough questions that those of us who are in ministry, however that is, and we're all in ministry if we're followers of Jesus, that we need to ask ourselves, where are our priorities? Christ first, then our family, then the world. Something to think about today. If this has touched something in you, call our prayer lines. We'd love to walk and talk this through with you.